This Kraken team is looking pretty good defensively, and now with Grubauer and Drieger as the tandem in goal, they're going to be pretty hard to score against, but it still leaves the question of who's going to score for them. Coming out of the expansion draft, which surprisingly was just over a week ago, seems like it's been quite a bit longer than a week since that with everything that's been going on, but that's not the point. Coming out of that expansion draft, the Kraken did look like a pretty solid defensive team and even pretty decent in goal before Grubauer signed. But the biggest question that's been revolving around this team is where the points were going to come from. Now, this is a problem that we kind of expected coming into the first season regardless, but with the amount of cap space that the Kraken had coming into free agency, we knew that a couple of forwards were going to be coming to Seattle. The question was who? Well, one of the answers to that question, which honestly we pretty well knew was going to be the case even in the days leading up to free agency actually opening up, was now former St. Louis Blue, Jaden Schwartz. Now, this was about as well kept of a secret leading up to free agency as Drieger signing with the Kraken was leading up to the expansion draft. But it still is a solid signing that the Kraken made, so really early on in this week anyway, the only part of this deal that we weren't sure about was what the contract was going to look like. And now that we know that, honestly, it's not a terrible deal at all. He'll be making $5.5 million for the next 5 years in Seattle, and well, the term is a little bit longer than I ideally would have liked to see for a 29-year-old center. It still isn't a terrible deal by any means, and even if the contract does look like he's getting a bit overpaid in the last couple of seasons, he definitely will add much needed contributions on the offensive end for this team. Now, we shouldn't get too carried away. He's not going to be winning a Rocket Richard or anything like that, but this is still a guy that will slot into a top 6 role in Seattle's forward end right away, and is definitely the type of finisher that can get that puck into the net that Seattle needs. For those that aren't familiar with Schwartz, again, he's a 29-year-old 5'10" forward that can play center, but probably looks to be a little bit more of a left winger, which is also something Seattle could use. He was drafted in the first round, 14th overall in the 2010 entry draft by the St. Louis Blues, and has been there for the entirety of his 10-year career up till this point. His career got off to a maybe somewhat underwhelming start, but he wasn't seeing a whole lot of ice time in his first couple of seasons, and by his third season at the age of 21 in the 2013-14 year, he put up 56 points in 80 games on 25 goals and 31 assists. Those 80 games still are the most that he's played in any single season, but with the exception of the 2016 season where he missed a chunk of time due to an elbow injury, he has played the vast majority of every year since. The following year in the 2014-15 campaign, he also had pretty good numbers with 63 points on 28 goals and 35 assists in just 75 games. Of course, suffered that elbow injury in the following season, but then bounced back in the 16-17 campaign with a 19-goal, 55-point season in 78 games, and then improved on that the next year with 24 goals and 59 points in just 62. Nearly a point per game player that season. Of course, as you can see, his numbers did drop off in the 18-19 season, but that was also the year that the Blues would end up winning the Stanley Cup, and he was a major contributor when it came to the playoffs, where he scored 12 goals and 8 assists in 26 playoff games. Then the year following that championship run, he looked well on his way to playing a full 82, having played the first 71 games for the Blues, but then the season was cut short due to COVID, still ending with 57 points and 22 goals, and a very solid campaign for him. And of course, this last 2021 season didn't necessarily go as well for him as some other years with just 21 points and 8 goals in 40 games, but again, it was a bit of a weird year for everyone, so it's hard to blame him too much, and I think we should be looking for a bounce back year in Seattle. But even outside of points production, which granted Seattle will need from him, he still does offer quite a bit when it comes to the defensive part of the game, as he is a solid two-way forward, as you can even see in his possession stats, which certainly are pretty exceptional. And obviously that theme of two-way forwards is something that we've talked about before with Seattle, and definitely saw in the expansion draft and even in the entry draft, as Ron Francis is clearly valuing a defensive mindset, even from his forwards. So even if with Schwartz he does go through a bit of a dry spell here and there when it comes to points production, which he has gotten a bit of a reputation for being a somewhat streaky player when it comes to that aspect of the game, he'll still be able to make a big difference on the ice for Seattle on the defensive end, even if he isn't getting the puck in the net. Of course, again, Seattle needs its most help when it comes to getting the puck in the net, and he definitely can produce when it comes to that, as we saw with already 4 20-goal seasons under his belt, and another one where he got pretty close. But even when it comes to his style of play and how he likes to get that points production, he definitely seems like the type of player that Seattle is looking for in a guy that is hard to play against, as he definitely has a little bit more of that net front type of presence, standing in front of the goalie screening him and using his exceptional hand-eye coordination to deflect shots into the goal, or just giving the other guys a better shot. Also, of course, having pretty solid hands and quickness with the puck and puck handling, and picking up rebounds and putting those in as well. And even outside of what he can add on the ice, another thing that the Kraken have mentioned being an important thing when they look at players that they want to pick up is strong character guys as well that can be a good presence in a new locker room, which Schwartz definitely has the reputation of being that as well. A strong guy that's always one of the more popular ones in any locker room he goes to, and does add a veteran presence that Seattle definitely could use with the amount of younger players that they picked up in the expansion draft. So all in all, again, even obvious Spaceball references aside with his last name, this is a very good pickup for the Kraken that fits a lot of the different things that they're looking for when it comes to building this team and this forward group. So as we mentioned before, this is definitely a type of guy that we're looking at slotting right into a top 6 role in Seattle at the start of the season. Again, it's hard to say exactly where in the top 6. I'm not sure that he'll so much be playing center, even if that is where the Kraken could use the most help. Although he might play a little bit more center early on in the season with Yanni Gourde out for the first month, maybe a bit longer. But I would imagine he probably ends up being a little bit more of a winger down the road once the Kraken get Gourde back and healthy. As far as whether he's first or second line, again, that's pretty hard to say and probably depends on whether he's playing center or wing to some extent. Obviously, we still don't know if the Kraken are going to make more pickups on the forward end that could change things around, but I would imagine especially those first 2 lines are going to be somewhat of a kind of mixing things up as they go for at least the start of the season, and he'll probably play on both lines as they try to figure out what works. But I'd also love to hear what you guys think of this signing and maybe where you think Schwartz should play for the Kraken. What do you think of his contract? Again, $5.5 million for 5 years for a 29-year-old forward. Or maybe you're a Blues fan and would like to give your input to what you're going to miss most about Schwartz on your team. Otherwise, I think that pretty much will do it for this one. Don't worry, we're still getting to Alex Winberg with the next one. So if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below. And until next time, be good to each other and go Kraken. Peace.